All right, let's just dive right in. We're going to tackle one of the biggest questions out there, consciousness. You know, that inner movie, that feeling of actually being you? What is it? And more importantly, why do we even have it?
I mean, really just stop and think about that for a second. We don't just process information like a computer, right? We feel things. The sting of a paper cut, the warmth of the sun on your skin, that simple joy you get from a really good meal. Why? Why do we have this rich, vivid inner world instead of just being, unfeeling machines operating in the dark?
Well, what if the answer isn't some huge, unsolvable philosophical mystery? What if it's actually something way more practical? This explainer is all about exploring a really powerful idea, that consciousness isn't some kind of magical add-on. It's a mechanism, a biological tool honed over billions of years for one single fundamental purpose, to survive.
Okay, so let's get into this framework. We're going to look at consciousness not as a big philosophical problem, but as a biological solution. Let's think of it as a kind of survival engine.
This whole idea really reframes the problem by swapping out all the magic and mystery for some straight-up physics. It suggests that consciousness is simply the, quote, internal signal of an entropy management system. Now, I know that sounds like a mouthful, but it's a brilliant way to connect our private, subjective feelings to the basic laws of the universe.
So to really understand that connection, we have to start with the single biggest challenge that every living thing has ever faced. And that brings us to our next section, life's battle against entropy.
So what even is entropy? The easiest way to think about it is as the universe's default setting. It's this relentless, totally unavoidable tendency for everything to just fall apart, to go from organized to disorganized. A clean room gets messy, a hot cup of coffee goes cold, a sandcastle gets washed away by the tide. That's entropy in action, all around us.
And this gets to the absolute core problem for life itself. See, the universe is this massive high-entropy sea, constantly drifting toward chaos and disorder. But life is like this tiny island of low entropy. It's incredibly organized, it's structured. So just to exist, it has to constantly fight against that massive universal tide of decay.
So how in the world does life pull off this amazing trick? Well, here's the crucial idea. It has to find a way to bias random motion. It needs to take the chaotic jiggling of molecules and somehow, someway, channel it into organized, purposeful activity. It has to cheat entropy, at least in its own little corner, and only for a little while.
And life does this using something biologists call ratchets. These are just mechanisms that force things to move in one direction, from chaos toward order. And this happens on every single level. You've got chemical ratchets turning random molecular bumping into useful work. You've got metabolic ratchets organizing energy, all the way up to neural and cognitive ratchets that guide how we think and make decisions. It's a whole hierarchy of order-building machines.
Okay, so life is an order-building machine in a constant fight against chaos. But how does it know which actions are going to build order and which ones are going to lead to decay? This brings us to a really key idea, the language of value.
For this, the brain uses a surprisingly simple system. It's called valence. And at its core, valence is just a binary, thumbs up or thumbs down evaluation. Is this thing good for my survival, or is it bad for my survival? That's it. It's the brain's most basic gut check on absolutely everything. And you and I experience this constantly. Things like food, safety, warmth, these all generate a positive valence signal. They feel good, right? And that feeling motivates us to go toward them. But on the flip side, a predator, a poison, standing too close to a cliff edge, those generate a negative valence signal. They feel bad, and that feeling motivates us to get the heck away. It's a super simple but incredibly powerful navigation system for staying alive.
So the next obvious question is, how does the brain actually get these good for me or bad for me signals? Well, it's not magic. It gets them by constantly listening to what's going on inside the body. And this process of internal sensing, it has a name, interoception.
And these signals are things we all know intimately. Hunger, thirst, pain, pleasure, fear, fatigue. These aren't just random sensations floating around. They are raw data streams telling the brain about the body state. Is it stable and secure, or is it in danger? This is the physical language of survival.
And this brings us right to the absolute heart of this whole idea. Consciousness might be what it feels like to evaluate entropy-relevant information. Just think about that. That pang of hunger, that's what it feels like to process a signal that your internal order, your low entropy state, is at risk. That feeling of pleasure,
That's the feeling of knowing you've just reinforced your order, that you're safe for now. Our subjective feelings are the very experience of managing our own survival, moment to moment.
Now, if this is true, it has some pretty profound implications for where we find meaning in the world. So let's explore that in our final section, where meaning comes from.
This framework gives us a really fascinating lens to look at one of the biggest questions of our time. Thinking about it this way, could an artificial intelligence ever be truly conscious?
When you look at it like this, you see a huge difference. For a living thing, the stakes are completely real. Survival is an internal, non-negotiable goal. It's the only goal that ultimately matters. But for an AI today, it has no real stakes. It doesn't fear being turned off. Its goals are just given to it by a programmer. It's a disembodied algorithm, not a vulnerable, self-regulating system with skin in the game.
So this theory suggests that maybe, just maybe, genuine consciousness actually requires all this messy biological stuff. It might need a metabolism, the constant need for self-repair, and maybe most importantly, it might require vulnerability, the constant looming threat of damage and ultimately death.
And this leads us to what is maybe the most powerful and poetic insight in this entire framework. It's just 3 simple words. Death grounds meaning.
Think about what that means. If there were no possibility of failure, no chance of ceasing to exist, then nothing would truly matter. There'd be no real reason to prefer doing one thing over another. Value, purpose, meaning, and all the feelings that represent them, they only emerge because we exist in this constant state of tension, this fragile, difficult struggle to keep going against that inevitable pull of chaos. Which leaves us with one last kind of mind-bending thought to chew on. If consciousness is born from this very physical struggle against entropy, then maybe it's not just some weird quirk of biology here on Earth. Maybe, just maybe, consciousness is the universe, through little pockets of order like us, learning to care about what happens next. It's the cosmos itself developing a point of view. What do you think?